The British Telegraph has published 6 thorough maps illustrating the escalation of the Middle Eastern conflict over the past year. The attacks by Hamas on Israel have triggered a surge of violence and backlash, leading to political upheaval throughout the region. These developments signify the onset of a significant transformation in the Middle East, reshaping regional alliances and, in certain instances, global partnerships. As of October 7th last year, Israel entered a new phase of engagement in the Middle East. The 2020 Abraham Accords, initiated by former President Donald Trump, established full diplomatic relations with the United Arab Emirates, making it the third Arab nation, following Egypt and Jordan, to fully recognize Israel. Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, signatories to the Abraham Accords, have facilitated Israeli flights to the Persian Gulf by opening their airspace, promoting trade and tourism cooperation. Notably, in September 2023, Israeli Tourism Minister Haim Katz undertook a historic 2-day visit to Riyadh, becoming the first cabinet member to officially visit Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who effectively leads Saudi Arabia, indicated that the two nations are progressing toward normalizing relations, representing a substantial geopolitical shift. Concurrently, meaningful advances have been made in establishing full diplomatic relations with Morocco and Sudan, despite the bleak prospects for a Palestinian state under the hardline leadership of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Nevertheless, many nations in the Sunni Arab world appear to be gradually accepting Israel as a potential partner rather than a conventional rival. This shift is predominantly driven by the escalating threat from Iran, whose support for terrorism and nuclear ambitions has raised alarm among progressive leaders in the Gulf. The normalization of relations aligns with the strategic interests of the United States. The historical and emotional ties of Palestinians with much of the Arab world, which have isolated Israel for decades, have diminished, coinciding with Washington's goal of containing Tehran's influence. In response to the Hamas attack on October 7th, Israel swiftly initiated retaliatory airstrikes on Gaza, underscoring its resolve in addressing the threat. Following 20 days of sustained bombardment, the Israeli army entered the Gaza Strip on October 27th, marking a pivotal moment in one of the most controversial military campaigns in the nation's history. The death toll has escalated to 41,500, with thousands injured and millions displaced in dire conditions, according to the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health. Airstrikes on Jabalia and Al-Mawasi areas, alongside the tense siege of Al-Shifa Hospital, allegedly a Hamas military base, have emerged as significant flashpoints in the campaign. While the rationale for Israel's actions may resonate with some, the manner in which the operation has been executed has fostered considerable sympathy for the Palestinian movement among neighboring Arab states. King Abdullah of Jordan, despite diplomatic relations with Israel, voiced the prevailing outrage among many countries in the region by condemning the collective punishment of the Gaza populace for Hamas's actions, characterizing it as a war crime just a month after the campaign commenced. The peace process and regional cooperation confront serious challenges. The military campaign has resulted in significant tension with Israel's Western allies, particularly President Joe Biden, who has consistently advocated for restraint. The resolution of the situation in Gaza is viewed as a critical factor influencing groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis in their consideration of withdrawing support for Hamas. Simultaneously, the challenges faced by Hamas, coupled with Iran's backing, its staunch supporter, remain pivotal to the political instability in the Middle East. Following the outbreak of conflict in Gaza, Yemen's Houthi rebels intensified attacks on vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, utilizing rockets in November. This Iran-backed Shiite militant group has rapidly scaled up its ship hijacking operations, with prominent imagery of commando missions to infiltrate ships associated with Israel circulating globally. The escalating conflict has inflicted substantial damage on multiple vessels, including two that were completely sunk by advanced anti-ship missiles and drones. These assaults have necessitated alterations in major shipping routes around the Horn of Africa and have prompted an increased military presence in the region from the US, UK, and other naval forces. These military entities have implemented a range of countermeasures, from intercepting missiles to, when necessary, neutralizing Houthi vessels. By January, the involved nations conducted airstrikes on 13 Houthi rebel positions, targeting strategic sites north of Yemen's capital Sana'a and near the port of Hodeidah. The Houthis have showcased that a domestically based organization with adequate support and strategy can exert significant influence on the global stage. In this context, the Houthis have compelled Israel to recalibrate its defenses, including the Iron Dome air defense system, to address threats from the south, while Israel concurrently faces pressures from other fronts in Gaza and the north. Although the majority of these attacks have been effectively intercepted, a Houthi missile strike in July aimed at Tel Aviv resulted in one fatality and injuries to over a dozen individuals, a notable accomplishment not achieved by Hamas from close range. The actions of the Houthis, bolstered by Iranian support, have further intensified the conflict in Gaza, elevating the region's threat level to the international community. Tensions and violence in Israel have surged significantly over the past year. In March, Israel executed an airstrike on an arms depot near Aleppo International Airport, resulting in at least 40 fatalities and a series of substantial explosions. Most recently, Israeli special forces targeted a Hezbollah missile production facility in Masyaf, approximately 40 kilometers from the Lebanese border. These airstrikes, occurring amid Syria's backing for Hezbollah, have moved the region closer to the brink of full-scale conflict. The United States is navigating its response to the threats posed by Iran-backed proxies, including Shiite militias and various terrorist organizations, while striving to prevent a broader conflict. Concurrently, it faces increasing pressure to withdraw the remaining 2,500 troops from the anti-ISIS coalition in Iraq. In January, 3 U.S. service members lost their lives in a drone attack by an Iran-aligned militia from southern Syria, targeting a base in Jordan. This incident provoked a series of counterattacks on 85 sites across Iraq and Syria. The casualties serve as a stark reminder to Jordanians of the U.S. military presence, currently at its highest level in 2 decades. The Jordanian government, while maintaining relations with Israel, is adjusting its foreign policy to address the complex regional dynamics. In April, Jordan facilitated the interception of Iranian missiles aimed at Israel, despite facing criticism regarding the situation in Gaza. On October 8, 2023, following Hamas's attacks on Israeli territory, Hezbollah launched rocket strikes from southern Lebanon into Israel, resulting in the emergency evacuation of thousands of residents in the north, including 70,000 who had been residing in temporary shelters for nearly a year. Civilian casualties, including the deaths of 11 children in Maidal Shams in the Golan Heights from incoming rockets, were reported. In response, Israel executed airstrikes and artillery shelling, compelling Lebanese civilians to flee. Israel sustained its pressure on Iran-backed militias to withdraw north of the Litani River, yet Hezbollah remained defiant, citing the unresolved situation in Gaza. Recent events, including the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, have ignited an Israeli ground offensive, the first since 2006. Nearly a year after the Hamas offensive, Israel is engaging in military actions within Lebanon, a sovereign nation, disregarding cautions from allies in Washington and Europe. The formerly stable Lebanon, with profound military ties to the US and UK, now faces escalating conflict, contributing to widespread turmoil. Beirut, once a financial center for the Western elite, is also subject to Israeli airstrikes. While described as limited, Israel's ground offensive in the south carries the potential to escalate into a broader conflict, surpassing the developments in Gaza. This may lead to heightened international criticism should civilian casualties occur, increasing pressure on Israel and undermining the more favorable outlook it had envisioned a year prior. Previous Israeli military operations in Lebanon have not achieved their intended outcomes. The path to resolving the current situation remains uncertain. It is plausible that Tehran may leverage the circumstances as its arch-rival grapples with challenges on both northern and southern fronts. The April 1st Israeli airstrike on the Iranian embassy complex in Damascus resulted in 16 fatalities, including 8 members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This action was met with approval by some factions, yet raised concerns among others due to its potentially perilous implications. Shortly thereafter, on April 14th, Iran countered by launching hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel for the first time, indicating a significant escalation in tensions. However, experts noted that the attack was executed in a manner that allowed Israel and its allies to intercept nearly all projectiles, fortunately resulting in no casualties. 5 days later, Israel targeted an air defense facility deep within Iran with a missile strike, a move that ostensibly allowed both sides to maintain face. In July, the assassination of Hamas chairman Ismail Haniyeh occurred in Tehran amid the funeral of President Ebrahim Raisi, who had perished in a helicopter crash. On Tuesday, shortly after its ground attack on Lebanon, Iran launched nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel, escalating tensions in the region. The positions of both parties remain sharply divided. An Iranian spokesman asserted that the country does not intend to engage in a large-scale war. Conversely, Benjamin Netanyahu publicly addressed the Iranian populace, stating that when Iran achieves freedom, that moment will arrive sooner than anticipated, resulting in significant changes. Israeli hardliners are advocating for a decisive response to Tehran, arguing that with Hezbollah and Hamas temporarily weakened, the current moment represents an optimal opportunity for action. There is considerable pressure to target Iran's nuclear facilities, a long-standing objective of Netanyahu. However, President Joe Biden has emphasized that such measures would not be permissible. The critical question persists. To what extent will Netanyahu heed the counsel of his advisors, and how far will the United States go to support its ally during this crisis? Netanyahu's strategic decisions and Washington's responses in the upcoming months will significantly influence the tension between the two sides and shape the future of the Middle East in the uncertain times ahead.